Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Welcome to our community, the members, the subscribers, the viewers. And thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Before we begin tonight, we'll just give it a sec to make sure everything's up and running. I posted a video earlier on for you guys with a couple of updates on the front in Gaza, things that are happening inside of Israel, and latest developments when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to the United States of America, where we haven't seen a confirmation that he will be seeing Joe Biden nor Donald Trump. And that's something we can elaborate on after we discuss our main topics for tonight. Clearly, they're trying to either avoid him unless we have a visit at the end of it confirmed, because they don't want to confirm anything now, and also his whereabouts haven't been confirmed to avoid obviously protests as much as possible and not to give organizers time to obviously organize for protests against Benjamin Netanyahu. Before I begin, thank you so much for Koopa Coop for your super, and for Mama Pat for her super the other day that I forgot to thank her for. And welcome to all of the community, all of the members, subscribers, and viewers. And thank you so much for joining me for another live stream. So Benjamin Netanyahu is going to the United States and Israel is in flames. He made sure to leave Israel in flames when he goes on his trip to the United States. And today we saw a variety of attacks on Israel. Many of them haven't been confirmed in Israel and have been censored to a very large extent, to a level where we only saw confirmations coming out from the civilians in Israel posting videos on social media regarding these attacks. One of these attacks, again, Hezbollah, every single day, they are introducing a new settlement. And today, their new settlements came in a place called Tsuriel. Tsuriel is a place next to Ma'alot in Israel. We had a report saying another settlement has entered into Hezbollah's range of fire. The organization fired missiles. Reports say tens of missiles. One report said 10 missiles. Let me just get that up for you again. Yeah, the organization launched about 10 rockets hours after the elimination, according to that report in Israel, of 2 people in Lebanon. They didn't confirm if they were members of Hezbollah or not. Some of them were intercepted, according to Israel, but others exploded and caused a lot of damage in Moshav Tsuriel, that's near Carmiel and about 8 kilometers from the border. The documents from the area show that the launch of many interceptors toward the Katyushas launched by Hezbollah, and there was damage to several buildings in the area. Clearly, Hezbollah is escalating day by day. So it's a trend that is not stopping. And if they continue by this rate, they will be expanding every single day. And that expansion has been there from about 5 days ago, getting more settlements in the range of fire. But that wasn't the only escalation, by the way. One very significant attack we saw was next to Haifa. Haifa is the main northern city in Israel. And many people heard explosions, again, without sirens. Where did they come from? Did they come from Lebanon or did they come from Ansarullah? Then we had Ansarullah. Ansarullah, they launched over 6 ballistic missiles. 6 ballistic missiles, and Israel didn't even mention anything about interception, landing, not landing. And although there is a probability of them missing the targets, but the likelihood of nothing reaching or Israel not intercepting anything is very small. The chance is very small for that. Usually they would land something and not miss all of them. But this is something that we've been seeing from the beginning, but today was quite significant when it comes to the diversification of attacks in multiple locations with very little information coming out. And as I said, the people who announced these attacks were civilians from inside of Israel, posted on social media. And we still had intense attacks from the resistance altogether. I spoke about Gaza previously, and their recently released evidence of targeting Israeli tanks across Gaza, particularly or mainly the southern part of Gaza, with Yasin 105 RPG and with other side bombs and handmade bombs that they make over there. Clearly having lots of freedom when it comes to the resistance against Israel over the ground, under the ground, and clearly Israel is lying. Now, Israel said several people were injured in that settlement that Hezbollah just started targeting, the new settlement. And Hezbollah, like I said, have been increasing for many places now in the north. They've been increasing their range of fire to new settlements all across, and that trend hasn't been stopping. It's been continuing. It has been continuing. On the Lebanese front also, Hezbollah targeted Israeli bases that they target regularly. Al-Manara colony with IDF troops in it. They had a large missile strike on the Upper Galilee. Israel obviously did not intercept many of them. They intercepted only some of them. They targeted areas, and sirens were heard in the Krayot area, which is a suburb area next to Haifa, very highly populated, and that was part of an area that was published in Hezbollah's Hudhud drone that went over northern Israel a couple of weeks ago, signaling that we sent you the footage, and now we are targeting. Hezbollah carried out their regular attacks as well on other bases too, and obviously we had this Ansarullah escalation, and they're clearly not de-escalating anything. And they said that Al-Hudaydah is now active again, everything's okay, and they're continuing with their operations. From Gaza, the main resistance attacks came from Al-Qassam brigades. Al-Qassam brigades carried out the majority of the attacks and the most significant ones, not just against the tanks that we spoke about previously, but they also targeted the Netzarim command base. The Netzarim command base in the Netzarim line that splits Gaza between the north to the south. That's where Israel has its command based in the area to control the movement and keep Gaza split as much as possible. They have three main bases, one in the central part, one towards the borders with Israel, and one towards the coastline. The one that the resistance targeted was the one in the central line, the main command base in that region. Then we had another attack from the Palestinian resistance on areas surrounding Gaza. So we're talking about the north, all of the north, the Galilee, not just the upper Galilee, the lower Galilee, then the areas near Haifa, if not Haifa directly. Then we have the areas surrounding Gaza. Eilat would have been most likely a target from the bombardment, from the missile strikes that came from Yemen, but then again, Israel to them as if nothing happened. They didn't say anything. And again, many people in Israel report regularly that they hear explosions, that they hear things happening without confirmation, sometimes without sirens, without the Iron Dome working, without notification, without the app working, because every Israeli, they have an app with sirens, and it warns them where you will have sirens and you'll most likely have an explosion where people need to protect themselves. These were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about. Another very interesting thing, and then I'll open the space up for all of you in the community if you have any comments or questions to direct from me, is Benjamin Netanyahu is going to the United States. Benjamin Netanyahu in the United States. But no one confirmed if they're going to see him or not. I mean, how embarrassing is that? Firstly, this man has no shame whatsoever. He goes to the United States like he did in 2015 with Barack Obama, dissing the president in the Congress. They warned him this time, don't do the same thing. But what kind of a country is this? What, begging a foreign head of state not to diss you in your own country, in your own Congress? What kind of sovereignty is this? What kind of undermining is this? But the fact that no one confirmed that they're seeing him and he's still going, as if he's imposing himself as well. The act of accepting him or welcoming him is shameful enough, but hey, you're talking about the United States here, you know, the country that supports Israel. But no one's confirming that they're going to see him. If they don't see him, will he just have his Congress speech without meeting Biden or Trump? Without meeting Biden or Trump? He went there with a red tie to appeal to Donald Trump, right? But again, even Donald Trump didn't confirm. I wouldn't be surprised if he would, but he didn't confirm that he's going to see him yet. And for those of you who are unaware, Donald Trump was extremely close to Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was working hand in hand with him. And Benjamin Netanyahu used to always say very good things about Donald Trump in Israel and in the media, and Donald Trump, and I appreciate him, and this is the strongest bond, and. Netanyahu used to love Donald Trump very much during his term, and Donald Trump was walking next to him when it comes to the Abraham Accords and them trying to reach a peace treaty with Saudi Arabia. They obviously succeeded with some of the Arab states, but Saudi Arabia failed. Trump always used to say that if I was there, we would have this peace treaty with Saudi Arabia, but that clearly did not happen. That did not happen. The tensions between Netanyahu and Trump only started with that phone call of Benjamin Netanyahu to congratulate Joe Biden. Trump wasn't happy with that. He was fuming at the time, and he criticized Netanyahu very heavily. He criticized Netanyahu very heavily at the time, and he started saying bad things about him. However, ever since then, Bibi Netanyahu has been trying to tone it down and get back into the good books of Donald Trump. Obviously, there's the argument of the people behind them and who funds them and the support for Israel. That's undeniable. But that doesn't mean the relationship between the two would be perfect. No, not necessarily. And clearly, that's something that Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to fix. Will he see him? Will he make time for him? Are they making excuses up to not meet him or to cover a secret meeting with him? Because if they would want to meet him, Benjamin Netanyahu would want to make it public. That's one thing. They might want to meet him to say certain things, but they also know how sensitive the situation is at the moment, and they're worried. They're worried. The elections are down the road, and although they support Israel, they don't want to be seen as sitting to Benjamin Netanyahu who's committing a genocide that's live in Gaza. I'm sure Trump has certain things to say to him. I'm sure Biden has certain things to say to him. And by the way, Biden is hiding with this COVID thing now. Biden did a couple of things that are very abnormal. Number one, not announce directly his resignation, him going out of the race for the presidency, and us hearing the reports, only reports saying that he is gonna come and talk at some point. That usually does not happen. Apparently has COVID. But what a nice excuse, COVID. Every time something's wrong, COVID. Reminds us of the COVID days, everything goes wrong, COVID. The best excuse possible. But usually, when you want to quit the race, when you want to resign, you're going to have to go to your people and declare it as a head of state. You don't let someone else say it on your behalf. What's happening here? What is happening? And we need to see him. Where is he? What is he saying? Now, will they meet him? Will they not? That's something that we're going to see. We haven't established any evidence, any concrete evidence yet, that neither Trump nor Biden will be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. This is what I wanted to share with you. Let me open the space up for the community, for your participation. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. Again, if you're new to these live streams, we have more in-depth talk, and we open the space up for the community as well for participation. If you're new and you're a fan of shorter videos, you can go ahead to my video tab where I post short videos with updates. You can go ahead and watch them after this live stream as well. Let's have a look. Kate, any update on the 14 Palestinian faction meeting with the PA in China? They need a week to iron out their differences. Will they demand Abbas to step down? Interesting. They haven't released a lot of information when it comes to that meeting, and we're not hopeful that this meeting will produce anything positive. Why? Because it still consists the recipe for failure, and that recipe for failure lies down with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, led by the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Anything that these people touch, they corrupt. Mahmoud Abbas is a person who tied himself and his existence to the state of Israel. If something's wrong with Israel, something's wrong with him. You're talking about a Palestinian Authority that's blaming Hamas for the genocide in Gaza. Can you get any lower than that? You heard Palestinian Authority, the presidency statement. And yeah, there are different voices inside, and there are people from the Palestinian Authority opposing views. There are even Palestinian people in the Palestinian Authority who fight with the resistance in the West Bank. But I'm talking about the heads, how it's run in the official stance. They said Hamas is as liable to the genocide as Israel. How low can you be? Whitewashing. And how great could you be for Israel? And again, I repeat the same notes that came from the senior figure in the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is a secular leftist movement, Marxist movement, that participated in the meetings that were held in Russia. His name is Maher al-Tahir. He was based in Lebanon, and he had an interview following this meeting in which he was asked about the meeting. What's going to happen? Is there going to be sort of unity? And he said, there were initially good vibes, and the Russians came with advice. Lavrov came and said, we're not here to impose our will on you. Look at the contradiction between Russia and Western countries. By the way, the Western countries come with arrogance and supremacy, and the Russians, we're here for advice. This is how they operate. But shows you the difference between the colonial arrogant mentality and other countries. He told them, but we give you advice. It's good for you to have unity so that we can try and reach a deal and speak to our friends in the international community about the Palestinian cause. And at the time, this PFLP representative said that there was a consensus amongst the majority of the Palestinian political movements, including the resistance movements, but the obstacle came from the Palestinian Authority, who could not confirm that they endorse the resistance alongside the political path too. What does that tell you? Servants of Israel, servants of Zion. That's what they are. Although we've had 30 years of negotiations and going through what is labeled as the peace process, a peace process that the man who started, Yasser Arafat, criticized before he was assassinated and poisoned. He said, we were fooled. That's why they assassinated him. He was poisoned. We were fooled with the Oslo Accords, he said. Yet, although the man who started the Oslo Accords said that about the Oslo Accords, you had this man coming in, continuing peace process and talks. So he's talking, and Israel's expanding. More settlers, more apartheid, more killing, more brutality, more administrative detention, more kidnappings, more field executions, more suffering, more depraved squatters supported by a depraved, abhorrent army, raging like cockroaches and animals in the West Bank, targeting innocent civilians. That's who's saving them? Palestinian Authority. They're enabling that, legitimizing this, legitimizing that. So I'm not hopeful. I'm not hopeful. I don't think you will see unity. And again, when you talk about unity, everyone needs to be careful. It's beautiful to come and talk about mutual values and what have you, but there are certain things I can't unite with you about. When it comes to certain major differences, even if you talk about it politically, siding with the person who's brutally committing a genocide against you, it's not like you're dealing with someone who's competing with you financially or something. You're talking about a nation that's committing an ethnic cleansing campaign, a genocide. There is no talk here, There is no compromise. There is no middle ground. You're either with a genocidal entity or you're against them. Yeah, there are different interpretations, how everyone's entitled to have a political opinion, but saying that the Palestinians are to be blamed for what's happening. And listen, everyone hides under this Hamas thing, by the way. Hamas are to blame. Who are Hamas? Excuse me. Hamas are members of the Palestinian people, a big chunk of the Palestinian people, represented by the Palestinian people in a democratic elections. What are you saying exactly? That the Palestinian people of Gaza are responsible. Obviously, not all of them Hamas, definitely not. But stop using this Hamas to cover up something else. Like the people who constantly tell you it's Israel versus Hamas. It's Israel versus Palestine. It's Israel versus the Palestinian people. Hamas is just one group. It's not just Hamas resisting. Dozens of groups are fighting. 13 resistance movements fight in Gaza. How many of them does the mainstream media talk to you about? Some of them leftist, some of them secular, some of them national. But they only talk Hamas, Hamas. That's what they understand. Why? To brainwash you. So how can you unite with a campaign that denies its own people's rights? How can you deny that? What kind of campaign is that? What kind of a defeated mentality is this? If you have an organization and you want to strive for success, will you bring someone with a loser mentality? Oh no, we can't do this and we can't do that. No, you don't do that. You can't have that. Let alone politically. And we're talking about the fate of a nation suffering from the greatest injustice in the 21st century. And thank you so much for that, Kate. Bob Marston, thank you so much for your super. And R. Christie, thank you for your super. And Infinite Content, thank you so much, all of you, for your super thanks. I'll start off with Bob. And we have another one. The Phil guy, thank you so much for your super. I'll start off with Bob. Wait with me 1 second. Let me open 2 chats here to be quicker for you. Okay. Bob is saying, with the situation in volatile state, all-out war could erupt at any moment. Mahmoud, if all-out war does erupt, will you change your video be changed? No, if all-out war, I'm a person who, first, thank you for super, Bob, and thank you for that question. I'm a person who wears his heart on his sleeves, and I analyze based on what I see. So, I personally believe in the concepts of and the values of justice, equality for human beings, and peace. Really, we talk about war because there's a war. I'm not going to act like it's not happening. There's a war. I'm going to talk to you about the war and exactly what's happening, and who's right and who's wrong. Simple. And in all-out war, it will expand both camps. So you're not all of a sudden going to see someone who has been supporting a genocide all along supporting the Palestinian side. No, it's going to be an expansion. That's what we're envisioning what's going to happen. All-out war, you're most likely going to see some NATO members participating with Israel and the US. The Arab states who sold Palestine a century ago will be with them, or declared or undeclared. The resistance fronts, we know who they are. The people who were shameful so far surrounding Palestine will remain shameful for as long as possible, unless something is negatively affecting their ruling, by the way. This is the only thing they care about. But no, my views won't change. My views are the same. Justice, equality, freedom, liberty. And we will obviously continue talking. I hope the war ends so we can talk about other stuff, by the way. But so far, it's stretching for a very long time. Listen, I wasn't talking about war in the beginning, but when the war started, there was so much misinformation and there was so much demand for revealing what's happening on the ground. And I'm a person who listens to my viewers. I'm viewer-led. So you tell me what you want me to, and I'll give it to you. I'll deliver. And ever since I started posting certain things to do with the war, I had more feedback, more appreciation, more people highly appreciate it, and I'm grateful for that. So I'll keep delivering. Obviously, we can diversify here and there. And it's obviously important, extremely important, to highlight the suffering of the Palestinian people, but hopefully we'll get it over and done with at some point. However, by the looks of it, it looks like it's going to stretch. It looks like it's going to stretch. And even if we have a de-escalation, a slight de-escalation or a slight ceasefire, I think you have a situation so tense that people will not all of a sudden become apathetic. Oh, and fine. Oh, that happened the other day. No. That's not going to happen. That happened in previous escalations. People will be vocal and high, but then when there's a ceasefire, that's it. Ceasefire, everything's fine. But now, even if we will have a ceasefire, that looks like mission impossible, you're still going to have a very, very tense situation. And thank you so much, Bob. I hope that elaborated. R. Christie, again, thank you for super. Said, hello, Mahmoud. I hear from Ritter the Christians have joined with Hezbollah. Have you any news? That's not new, R. Christie. In Lebanon, and we spoke about it from the beginning, every religious background, followers of any religion, any sect, any subsect, any denomination in each religion have opposing views. That's why we will never label this as a religious war. In Lebanon, You have Shia with Hezbollah, Shia against Hezbollah. One of them, by the way, is a previous Secretary General. His name is Subh al-Tufaili. He's against Hezbollah. He usually criticizes them heavily, and he criticizes them for what they've done in Syria, and that was one of their Secretary Generals. So you have Shia with Hezbollah, Shia against Hezbollah. You have Sunnis with Hezbollah, Sunnis against them. That's with the Muslims. Druze, you have Druze more, again, not with Hezbollah directly, but with the resistance approach. Druze against Christians, same. Maronites, Catholics. And the levels will differ here and there. But that's why you never label it as a sectarian thing. You know, people who are Christian siding with Hezbollah, that's nothing new. People in the Christian community used to call Nasrallah a saint in Lebanon and in other areas in the region. So that's not surprising, and that's been the case for a very long time. Even when you spoke about the civil war, there were people here and there were people there, and the people who want to label it as a religious war or Christians or Jews versus that's just for their own purposes, really. It's of their own interests. We have causes here, we have suffering, we have cases of inequality, and these calls are to divert the attention from the real thing and stop blaming other people as a whole, to have inner conflicts, and so that the people at the top can look at you and laugh at you and continue laughing all of the way to the bank, and they'll make money on your divisions. That's what they want to do, and that's why we will never label this as a religious war. This is a war that is primarily a war for human rights, for equal human rights. If there was equal human rights, if people received equality, you wouldn't have had this level of tension. You would have had political differences, like with any society, any family, hell even, but not to this level. What we have seen, however, from Lebanon, to elaborate on that, and have I any news, there are more movements participating in getting killed from Israel for their participation. Some of them are obviously the Palestinian resistance movements, Al-Qassam brigades. They had this attack on Israel after Israel targeted 2 members of Al-Qassam in Lebanon. Then the PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, some of them get targeted too, and they target Israel. Again, a Sunni Islamic movement called the Fajr forces, belonging to a group called the Islamic Movement in Lebanon, a Muslim Brotherhood background. You have the nationalist Syrian party movement. It was like a pan-Arabist movement. They declared that one of their fighters was assassinated by Israel today too. And obviously the Christians, they also have people who will participate with the resistance. So what we're seeing recently is more diversification when it comes to the fronts fighting. So clearly the Lebanese front is expanding slowly. In Gaza, from day one, we had everyone fighting anyway. Hamas is obviously at the forefront. Hamas is the head. They led this. They started this. They started Al-Aqsa flood. It was Hamas led. But then when they said participate with us, people started participating with them. Now with Lebanon, clear, it's very clear. Some people try and talk badly about the resistance. Be thankful for your resistance if you're in Lebanon. They are the people who liberated your country. Israel was occupying half of Lebanon. Who liberated Lebanon? Hezbollah liberated Lebanon. The Lebanese resistance, not the Lebanese army. Like Gaza, who liberated Gaza? Who forced Israel out of Gaza? Hamas and the Palestinian resistance. So let that be clear. Aiden Irish, I'm glad I spotted that because it wasn't highlighted, but I spotted it anyway. Said Salam Mahmoud and all my fellow Mahmoodians. I love that title, the Mahmoodians. That's a new term. Mahmoud, what does no red lines mean to you? And will these responses eventually lead to an all-out war with the resistance? Will this climax? Thanks, Habibi. Firstly, thank you so much, Aiden. Much appreciated. I think the red lines for each front are interpreted by that front. So the red line to Lebanon, that will be very, very clear. And Hezbollah will declare that that was a red line. Now, what we understand so far that are red lines, key strategic areas, anything to do with oil, anything to do with electricity, anything to do with airports, anything to do with core things with the economy of the country in general as a whole, the communication systems in the country, energy, communication, other strategic locations. I hope that's clear. Those would be red lines, both for Israel and Hezbollah if we were talking about the Lebanese front. In Yemen, we don't know. Yemen, to them, there are no red lines now. See, that's why I say it depends on the front. After Israel attacked Yemen in Al-Hudaydah, Ansarullah said there are no red lines. And now we entered phase 5, meaning they can target everywhere. And that's why Israel's underplaying all of these attacks that are happening in Israel. What, are you going to tell me that 6-7 ballistic missiles didn't land on Israel? I'm sure some of them landed, but they didn't say anything. So we have no red lines when it comes to Yemen. We have an extremely tense front in Lebanon. The red lines are being eroded between Israel and Hezbollah. There's still an understanding with Iraq, and that as an understanding goes back to Iran. And with Gaza, clearly the resistance is teaching the child murdering forces lessons every single day. So I hope that elaborates. And thank you so much, Aiden, for that question. And I hope I pronounced the name correctly. That was from Aiden Irish. Alan. The butcher of Gaza went to visit his mentors in the land of opportunists. That is so spot on, my friend. That is his mentors. Of course, his role models. So true. Stella Eliza Mahmoud, is it possible the IDF stole dead corpses to Gaza? Yeah, of course they did. Have you seen some of the prisoners who went back to Gaza? Operations. They've opened up, stole organs, and some of them were killed, and some of them are in mass graves. And the Palestinians won't be able to find out, because by the time they find out, they will be only skeletons. It's dark what's happening. It's very, very dark. And we've been speaking about that from the beginning. And they could be using these organs for their own troops. The largest skin bank as well. If you produce a horror movie based on Israel, it will be the best-selling, best-performing horror movie in history. In history. And you can make series and sequels from now up until 2200. Horror movie based on Israel. Ideas for Netflix. Mahmoud, that's from Adam. Are there any movements growing that will throw the puppets in the neighboring countries' governments? You talk about authoritarian, brutal regimes. What are we talking about? The Egypt military regime that came in a military coup. Jordan authoritarian government. Who? Saudi Arabia. There are tensions. There are tensions. However, we don't have anything visible that leads us to believe that they are at risk of imminent collapse or anything of the sort. Infinite Content saying Bibi thinks, thank you for your super set. The Bibi thinks he's coming to the US to get some love. But as Rose Royce sang, love don't live here anymore. Nice one. That was from Infinite Content. And Aini Anwar and Sailor Jerry Swallow, thank you for your supers. Greetings, my friend Jerry, as well to you. Let's go down to... Okay, we had Infinite Content. The Philly guy. The Philly guy saying, Sam Mahmoud, do you know the philosopher Ibn Khaldun and his concept of Asabiyya? Yeah, of course. His Muqaddimah is one of the must-reads. Introduction. And many people in the Western world learned from Ibn Khaldun about society and sociology. The Palestinian people have a strong group feeling. Everyone can learn from them about surviving against all odds. Yes, thank you so much, my friend. Yes, of course, I know Ibn Khaldun. I would highly recommend reading his about his works. I'm sure you'll find some translations in English. Also, Ibn Rushd, like Ibn Khaldun, you're talking about sociology. Ibn Rushd and these people were they had such a broad understanding in so many subjects, by the way. But Ibn Rushd, to many people in early Europe, and to this day, he was the founder of what Europe calls secularism, although he was a Muslim scholar. He was a religious man. And he was talking more about science and respecting science, because Muslims in the golden era was labeled as the golden era, and the era after the passing of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as well. They did a lot to translate works, translate books from other countries, from Greece, from other nations. And they obviously had an era where science boosted to unimaginable levels. So you had the Muslim culture at the time shining its light across the world, on Europe too, and Andalusia and all sorts. Ibn Khaldun is one of those very, very famous scholars, Ibn Rushd as well. And you have other scientists and astrophysicians too, Ibn al-Haytham, and many, many, many to read up about. And thank you so much for your super, my friend. Okay. AI, thank you so much, my brother. Barakallahu feek. And we also have Aini Anwar. We said, yeah, that was thanks for the super too. What do you think about Mr. Lavrov? That was from Water, Soil, Sun. What do you think about Lavrov's statements about not just standing by any longer? The US is constantly poking them. The US is sitting there, expanding to Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, and holding a couple of knives and sticks here and there, and sometimes they'll poke the neck of Russia, sometimes they'll poke the ear, sometimes they'll poke their foot, and now they're trying to poke their throat and eye. And of course they're not going to be sitting down. But who's escalating? Who's leading them to this approach? The arrogance and recklessness of Western powers. That's what's leading it. So the US and its little poodles, as in NATO state members, poodles of the US, and the UK government too, a poodle of the US, they should stop this hostile approach with Russia. Simple. Reach a solution to stop the war. They've already caused so much damage to their own economies and their own security and global security too, by their recklessness and hostility. And Russia's not going to sit on the side. Why should they sit on the side? Why should anyone be sitting on the side? And again, mainstream media will tell you about these comments as if there's some sort of a threat to something. So they don't like it when Russia says we're not going to be sitting on the side, but their countries, not only are they not sitting on the side, they're running towards the opposite direction with weapons and missiles. Like what they say about the Palestinians and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Israel has a right to defend itself. Hamas are bad. Firstly, Israel does not have a right to defend itself. That's why you keep repeating it, you liar. They are an occupying entity. The only right they have is to dismantle their apartheid system. That's the right that they have. Apart from that, they have no rights. They have an obligation to treat the people they occupied fairly with equality under international law, things that they don't. That's why they'll constantly repeat Israel has a right to defend itself, because they don't have a right to defend themselves. Secondly, do you say that to the Palestinians? Name me one of these pseudo-intellectuals who can come and tell you the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. Show me one of them. No, why? Because they're slaves, that's why. And again, all of this escalation is coming from the United States administration, first and foremost. And their view on the world, New World Order, unipolar world, the world is our backyard, our economic interests in Southeast Asia, our economic, as if the whole world is to them, as if the whole route should lead to the United States, right? And in them seeking this power and control and greed, they will annihilate everyone, including the American people. By the way, do you think they care about them? Do you think these people in power and these people who are pushing these puppets, ruling the countries, do you think they care about you? They don't care about you. It's all a lie. They'll send you to die for nothing, for lies. They use their own populations as cannon fodder for illegal, barbaric wars abroad. They chew them in, spit them out. For the system, for the military-industrial complex, for the cartels, not for the benefit of the people. And Matlas X, thank you so much for your super. Has Satan confirmed if he will meet Benjamin the Butcher in the United States? Or has Satan put him in the friend zone? The question is, which Satan in the United States? You have many Satans. Satan blue, Satan red, Satan what? But he will be meeting some Satans, though, in the United States. Let's see what else we have. Marvin Vergus, you said, thank you so much for your super, Marvin. You said, how's average Israeli feeling the war cost services? Everyone is feeling. Look, the general feeling in Israel from the main population is that there is lack of certainty. There is a lot of fear. Many people obviously left the country. Many of them are suffering financially. Many of them lost faith in the whole concept. The economy has been hit very bad. For the first time in history, Israel's main bank had to dig in the national reserve. That's critical. Ansarullah are causing them so much financial damage. It's beyond imagination. They've been degraded from Moody's in an unprecedented. So many things are unprecedented. That's the thing you need to understand. With a negative projection. They constantly talk about this being a war on their existence, a war on their independence. They always talk about the fact that they have an existential war. Yet, they hide things as much as possible so that they don't cause more fear and panic amongst the population. But there's so much you can fool the people. There are certain people who are brainwashed. But there are many people in Israel who realize what's going on and realize where Netanyahu is taking them. And the more time goes by, the less hopeful they are, all of them. Guy Ronisa Gasnodian. Salam, don't you think the ceasefire now will hamper the two-state solution for a few more decades, where more countries can join and sort out the evil, vindictive country out now? That's the thing. Firstly, you're very right about the delay, because what Israel wants is delay. What Israel has been doing ever since its inception, ever since its establishment, is buy time. They know they're a temporary entity, but they buy time. Now, they've been buying time for a very long time now. However, now it's all open. They've never been in this situation before. And according to Benjamin Netanyahu's formula and his idea, that he wants to completely eliminate this threat on their existence, in the form of Hamas at least. Something that the majority of people with an ounce of brain and a bit of military background and political background in Israel understand that it's not possible. It is not possible. His army spokesperson even said that defeating Hamas is unrealistic. It's an idea, and anyone who says that is selling lies to the public. I mean, how much more blatant can that be, right? So the top figures just standing next to him are saying that. But he's obviously saying that to buy time. In the meantime, there's an open war, and a war of attrition, really, that Israel does not excel at. Israel's war tactic is usually fast strikes, very, very sharp, fast, decisive, massive blows, immediately get the job over and done with. In enemy territory, get back, get the job done. Now things have twisted. The war is inside their territory. They're defending themselves. Defending, right? Hezbollah, they're in North Israel. They have attacks from Ansarullah. And the Palestinian resistance, they recaptured territories on the 7th of October. They recaptured territories that their ancestors were expelled from. And that's unprecedented. So, Obviously, they want to buy time. How possible is that? It's difficult to buy time like this. The only way they can buy time is by putting layers on it. Like I said, they thrive in the dark, and now they are under the light. That's not somewhere good for them to be in. They don't thrive, they don't do well under the light. They thrive in the dark. They need to go back to the dark. How do they go back to the dark? They have a deal, de-escalation, shut things down, concede a little bit, bite the bullet. Even if you admit the loss, but save yourself, right? Like I said that before, if a country is constantly banging on about being an existential threat, if you're an existential threat, bite the bullet, admit defeat, and concede, and save yourself, right? But what they're doing is, no, they're being arrogant, and they want to continue thinking that they can defeat Hamas. Hamas cannot be defeated. They represent an idea. That idea is called resistance. Let alone resistance for such a just cause. And with regards to other countries' participation, other movements are participating to the best of their ability. And there are noble people who are standing up for the people of Gaza with everything. And their stance, history will remember their stance, and they will stand up before God on Judgment Day, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with this stance. And those who didn't, in history, they will be viewed as exactly what they are, and on Judgment Day, they will be humiliated as well. And that's the biggest thing they can do for themselves. But these are movements. These are not countries. The countries we saw, what? We have Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. People worried about their own powers, own governments, financials, and what have you. And the people of Gaza can die. And thank you so much for that question. That was from Guy Renisa Gasnodian. Thank you so much for that question. We have other talks about, Russia providing assistance to Ansarullah. May well be. Don't forget that they produce Ansarullah, but Russia is entitled to support them. Why not? Let them support them. As a matter of fact, they'd be good for supporting them. They would be good for supporting Ansarullah, and Russia would be good if they would support the Palestinian resistance too. AH is saying, Ansarullah of Yemen are thinking of targeting Israeli infrastructure. What infrastructure could possibly be targeted in response to attack on Yemen oil depot besides Eilat, Haifa? Well, look, they said there are no red lines. What does that mean? There are no red lines. Now, there are two things that you need to consider. Them targeting and them landing, them hitting. So they could target a very crucial location, but it would be intercepted by Arrow 3 or what have you. By the way, millions in one interception, by the way. One of the Arrow 3 missiles, they're hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic missiles. One of them can cost between 1 to 3 million. 1 to 3 million. Talking about a hypersonic exoatmospheric missile. They would target them. But if they land, that's the question. If they land and they do the damage, then it escalates further. But so far they said everything is a target. There are no red lines. excuse me, they said there are no red lines. They didn't say everything is a target. They said there's no red lines. And that means they can target whatever they want. And Sadiq Abdul Qadir also mentioned, Assalamu alaikum Muhammad wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. He said, is Russia arming Ansarullah? Most likely they could be. You know, they don't always declare these things. Like Hezbollah's weapons. Russian made some of them, especially the air defense. Like, you know, it might have something from Iran too, but we've had the reports that they had, I think it was the SA-22 coming from Syria to them, but they wouldn't declare it, obviously, and they would do it through a third group. And, you know, it was funny how they operate, because there were reports that the Wagner group passed the air defense systems to Hezbollah. And when Russia was asked about that, they said, well, there is no more Wagner group, so we don't know what you're talking about. We can't comment on something that doesn't exist. So not denying or confirming, because there's no Wagner group. And Studio Rainer, thank you so much. You said, just found sources against Netanyahu. He's in the US now, and Biden or Kamala Harris are going to meet him. Also, the Democrat elites chose Hillary Clinton, but sources backing Kamala. Yeah, look, I mean, they'll have their different opinions. They'll have their different... And thank you so much for your super, by the way, Studio Rainer. They'll have their differences when it comes to preferences. And that would boil down to how much each candidate is willing to serve them, and to what extent they will go in serving them. They're bought. There was an argument that Edelson bought the presidency through Trump earlier on to implement his own agenda. And again, you know, we're talking about theories and people talking, but there are confirmations about the funds. That's clear, right? But there are some people who say that. There are some people who say that. Anwar, thank you so much for your super. He said, thanks for your work, Mahmoud. You're welcome, my friend. Said, I really appreciate your voice. Many supers. Try to send, get censored. They don't like the truth. And maybe all of this Palestine be freed in our lifetime. Inshallah, my friend. Thank you so much. Much, much appreciated. And thank you for your support. I'm getting roasted by Eileen. Israel is not defending itself. It is the aggressor. I know. I know, Eileen. Against the attacks of the Houthis. Alokti Kabir, Brother Mahmoud, can you explain Morocco and Azerbaijan situation? Well, the situations are quite similar. We're talking about governments with financial ties and certain security ties to an extent with Israel. Obviously not representing all of their populations, but the Moroccans were far more vocal than the Azerbaijani population with their government's complicity when it comes to Israel. And with Azerbaijan, the ties are more strategic than Morocco. You're talking about trade levels in the energy sector, trade levels that are extremely high. In Morocco, it's a little bit different, but still no less shameful, because they're dealing with a genocidal state. So... Paul, you drink when I drink. Here's cheers to Paul. I don't know what you're drinking. I'm drinking water now, by the way. Okay. Let's see if I have anything else before we wrap up. Kate, UAE signals willing to join post-war Gaza. And by the way, if I missed anyone because of the live, wouldn't mind repeating them below before we wrap up, because sometimes in the live the messages disappear, but I found Kate's one. UAE signals willing to join post-war Gaza, but USA has to lead with PA control Gaza and West Bank. Is UAE cahoots selling hummus Palestine? Look, any country, firstly, let me elaborate further on that. No one on earth is entitled to tell the people of Gaza who should govern them. The only day after we should be talking about is in Israel, not in Gaza. This whole talk, before I even begin to answer that, this whole talk about the day after is completely unsubstantiated, immoral, shameful, abhorrent, and you name it. Talking about the day after, the people that face genocide, how shameful can these people be who talk about the day after? Talk about the day after this criminal entity committing a genocide and crimes against humanity confirmed by international law with bloodthirsty leaders in the state and in the country too. What are we talking about? That's number one. And anyone playing with that card is just as abhorrent as anyone who came up with this stupid idea of having forces in Gaza. Forces in Gaza to what? Forces in Gaza. Let me tell you what, by the way, in case you don't know. Forces in Gaza to enable Israel to next time slaughter everyone without any resistance. That's why. They want forces in Gaza to support Israel in any next coming genocide, to slaughter them completely. This is what they'll be there for. So these forces, they should be in Israel. If you want any forces, you should have peacekeeping forces inside of Israel, preventing this genocidal entity from committing this barbarism. And the Palestinian people should be supported in their resistance, in their just resistance against this apartheid state. And then you're talking about the UAE. The UAE, nothing is surprising. We had reports that they said that the Saudis said that. Egypt, we had mixed signals from them, but officially they said we will not be participating in any force with Gaza. We heard reports saying that Jordan would also participate too. Not surprising. And you're talking about the same people who want Hamas collapsed, who want Hamas collapsed in Gaza, to collapse the resistance and make sure that the Zionist project spreads. That's what they want. And inshallah, they will not be successful with that. No, it's not looking like they're going to be successful with that, by the way. Because you're talking about the Palestinian resistance, and even if they said they agree on the phase 2 temporary people dealing with this aid thing, right? A couple of thousand people. Even if so, temporarily not undermining the general rule of the Gazans in Gaza. But think about it this way. If these people in Gaza wearing flip-flops and fighting Israel everywhere were able to humiliate this bloodthirsty, barbaric, abhorrent, genocidal, infanticidal army of Israel, do you think they will be unable to beat some UAE forces coming in, or some other? They take them down in a second. And again, all of this talk, in my opinion, is absurd, to be fair. I mean, the whole argument is so absurd, talking about, the day after Gaza, and everyone needs to be talking about the day after the genocidal, supremacist, apartheid state of Israel, supported and backed by Western genocidal countries. This is what we should be talking about. Gaza, they should be supported with everything. These are the people who are suffering. The children, the innocent women, the elderly, the men, they should be supported with everything, these people. And they deserve equal human rights, like every human does. And no one should dare be arrogant with these people and who they should and they shouldn't choose. And I hope that elaborates. That was from Kate. Thank you so much for that. And I'll take the last one from AH. AH is saying, what are your thoughts on Erdogan going to Syria with normalization talks with Bashar al-Assad? Well, look, the situation with Syria is one of obviously many mixed opinions. I was very vocal in the beginning of that time when it comes to Syria and what was happening against the population and supporting the people. However, there were many things that were misinformation, propaganda, and lies. We obviously didn't have a democratic government in Syria ever. There's obviously, it's democracy that's, democracy controlled by the state. And Syria had certain things that were that was good with the resistance. They had good relationship with the resistance, but also internally they were in need of reform. They were in need of more, obviously, equality, less corruption. There was an uprising. This uprising was portrayed in several manners. People who claim to be opposing the government for their national will, some of them were genuine people who wanted reform, who were good people. Others were not. Others were agents for foreign enemy projects for Syria. Now, again, in the early days, it was more difficult to establish what was right from what was wrong. And obviously people had a lot of strong opinions, like most of us in the Arab Spring had very strong opinions. Things get unraveled bit by bit, not to justify any crimes that happened then from the government, nor anything that was later on labeled on the opposition or people who claim to be opposing them and committing crimes too. So again, you had people opposing the government who were good, who were genuine people and cared for Syria. And you had people who were playing on a foreign card. Something similar with the Iranian opposition. That's abroad, by the way. Okay. Things are tense, but not just tense. You immediately had intervention from Western powers and talks about invading Syria. And that's something that was very suspicious too. Whenever you hear the United States, the United Kingdom, NATO wanting to interfere to save the population, doubt. Why? Because now they're supporting the opposite. They're supporting Israel. How comes you can take a position here and such an exceptionally different position there? I don't believe you. Why? Because you're a liar with a track record of genocide and crimes against humanity. So why all of a sudden do you care about the Syrian people, right? Like you cared about the citizens of Libya. No, you had a plan. What are we talking about here? Let's not be naive and ignorant. Obviously, some in the Muslim world started to sell this sectarian garbage, and some people fall for it. This Alawite government with the Shia against the Sunnis, and they're targeting everything. So typical garbage supporting their enemies. But again, some people are so twisted. Time goes by, you obviously have so many forces there. People realize that there's a certain status quo, and everyone is looking for their own interests, including Turkey. Turkey has a big interest in what's happening because, again, Western-supported movements carry out attack against Turkey from Syria, right? And Western-backed ISIS is in Syria too. So they realize they want to have a reconciliation talks with them. I mean, Turkey in the beginning, when they had Ahmed Davutoglu as their foreign minister, they had a foreign policy of zero problems. They used to call it the zero problems policy. That clearly went down the line, down the drain. And they had problems, and they were vocal about many things. And again, sometimes vocal without a lot of action too. Like now you're seeing them having this reconciliation with Egypt. They're having the Strategic Cooperation Council with them. And now they're having this reconciliation with Syria. All of the moves that bring the countries together in support for the people are good. And another reason that Turkey wants to have better ties with them too is the fact that they're working on a big economic project with Iraq. An economic project stretching from Iraq to Turkey. And Syria shouldn't be a hostile place. And don't forget, before 2011, Erdogan and Bashar al-Assad, they were very close. They were very close. And they used to meet regularly. So I think the most important thing with the two countries is to focus on the benefit of the people, obviously all of them, and see their common enemies, really. People who actually put them in danger. People who pose a risk for them. I hope that elaborates. And we can talk for hours about that too, but that's just a brief answer. Swat Rose, thank you so much for your comment, my friend. And everyone else. And yeah, we'll wrap it up. Oh, Studio Rainer, thank you. I have another studio. Thank you so much for your super thanks. Said, do you think Israel is the reason for the political chaos in the US? It's never been this chaotic since the Civil War. It feels like internal conflict. Well, your previous leaders, your previous presidents in the United States were warning you about these groups in the state hundreds of years ago. Listen to all of them. Listen to George Washington. Listen to Benjamin Franklin. Listen to the previous presidents and what they said about these people behind the government. It's not something new. It's not something new. So now it's in the form of this lobby. A lobby that's connected with other lobbies too. It's not just this lobby, right? Zionism is not just its own thing. But it's undeniably Zionist, it undeniably supports Israel, and it undeniably exists in the US and is enabled to exist in the US for some bizarre reason as a foreign lobby and by your politicians. Everything is absurd, which makes you question the system that enables it. Who controls America? Who runs America? Is it the president? What is the position of the president? Even Barack Obama, he let it slip a couple of times with the role of the presidency, and he spoke about it in his biography. President is just like a thing, like a small statue. There are things behind the president. And these things need to be investigated. They need to be reviewed. You need to have a reform, a substantial one. And we'll wrap it up there. Guys, thank you so much for another lovely live stream. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for all of your participation. I am sorry if I missed any of your comments, but I appreciate all of them. I appreciate all of your comments and your participation. Thank you so much for everyone who sent supers Koopa Coop, Bob Marston, R. Christie, Infinite Content, The Phil Guy, Aini Anwar, Sailor, Jerry Swallow, Marvin Burgess, Matlas X, Studio Rainer, Anwar, and Studio Rainer as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your participation and support. And obviously everyone else, again, I apologize if I missed some of your participation, but thank you so much for being with me. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your week ahead. I'll hopefully be with you tomorrow, God willing, inshallah. And if you haven't watched my other video, you can go ahead and watch it. Apart from that, have a blessed week ahead. Take care, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.